What up, Space Fam? Goes in here from AnimeUproar, and through your likes and comments, I saw how much you guys enjoyed the relationship videos about Tanjiro and Kanao, and Zenitsu and Nezuko, so I thought it was about time for the next one. The question was whether I should do Inosuke and Aoi next, or Mitsuri and Iguro. And although there were many requests for both, I decided to handle Inosuke first since he is the final member of the 3 demon-slaying amigos, whose relationship I have yet to cover. That being said, I definitely want to do a video on Mitsuri and Iguro as well. I absolutely love their love story, and if you guys want to see that too, smash that like button. If we can reach 6,500 likes on this one, I'll get started on that one ASAP. If you love Demon Slayer and have yet to subscribe, I don't know what you're doing. Make this the video you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications so you actually get your regular dose of Demon Slayer content. And while you're waiting for the new Demon Slayer video to drop, feel free to check out my huge and growing playlist that includes videos on all the Hashira, Demon Moons, and much more, including, like I said, a video on Tanjiro and Kanao's relationship and Zenitsu and Nezuko's relationship. So link to that is in the description. If you're cruising through the playlist and see a video topic that's missing, feel free to leave it as a suggestion for a future video in the comments below. Now without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. Out of the 3 main relationships from the series, this one is probably the one that comes out of left field the most, which is part of what makes it such an interesting one to discuss. And we'll go into the reasons why it feels a bit random and why it isn't so random, as we also analyze the story for clues of Inosuke and Aoi's interest in one another. Inosuke actually appears to be younger than Aoi. Inosuke is 15 years old, while in the first Demon Slayer light novel Flower of Happiness, Aoi reveals that she's older than the 16-year-old Kanao. Thus, she's either also 16 and only a few months older than Kanao, or she's even older than 16. Inosuke and Aoi have their similarities and differences. The sometimes girl-faced, sometimes boar-faced Inosuke is short-tempered, and Aoi reveals in the novel that she also has an impatient personality, and we see that coming through in the manga as well. They both aren't afraid to speak their mind, they can both come off as rude, and they can both be very loud. However, there are also differences. While Inosuke is introduced to us as someone who loves fighting with strong opponents and gathered pride from winning battles, Aoi was scared of battle, and viewed herself as human trash that was lucky to survive final selection. Aoi carried around feelings of inferiority because she thought that there was no value to a squad member who didn't kill demons, but only helped take care of injured squad members and carried out physical rehabilitation. We'll get to this in the main story, but in the novel, it's also mentioned that she trembled uncontrollably when the Sound Hashira ordered her to follow him on a mission. So in stark contrast to Inosuke, she is most definitely not a fighter. So they have a bit of an opposites attract thing going on there. Thus, their division of labor is pretty traditional. She can cook and help take care of Inosuke while he's healing from his injuries, while he can protect her from physical threats, whether human, animal, or demon. So now that we have a basic understanding of their personalities and how they mesh with each other, let's jump into the main story and search for clues of love. Aoi makes her debut in chapter 48 when Tanjiro arrives to the Butterfly Estate. Aoi is one of the girls that helps out there, and let's just say she's not shy. If Shinobu isn't there, Aoi is pretty much the one in charge, and what she says goes, since Kanao, who's actually higher ranking on paper, doesn't really respond or talk to people at this point. After Tanjiro and the Demon Slayer helper ask Kanao questions and things get awkward because she continues to smile without answering them, it's Aoi who finally shows up and breaks the tension. She has a commanding presence, and this is what I meant about her not being shy in the least. She screams, "Who the hell are you?" to Tanjiro and the helper, causing them both to tremble in fear. I don't want this to come off as a negative, even though it tends to have negative connotations, but you could say that very much like Inosuke, Aoi is a loudmouth. Loudmouth refers to someone who tends to talk a lot in an offensive or tactless way. And that's exactly what we see happening here. That quote-unquote hell she used in her dialogue wasn't dropped in there by accident. It's there to give us a sense of her personality, which is very unique among the female characters of Demon Slayer we've come to know so far. You can already start to imagine how loud Inosuke and her future home might be, with both of their often aggressive and loud personalities clashing. She goes on to order Tanjiro and the helpers to follow her like she's the boss and starts stomping off. Another parallel with Inosuke, who loves pretending that he's the boss and Tanjiro and Zenitsu are his underlings. When Zenitsu is causing trouble, Aoi tells him to pipe down, frightening him in the process. She's the opposite of a pushover and tells Zenitsu that if he doesn't behave, she'll tie him down. Zenitsu even starts to cry, telling Tanjiro that he was stabbed and poisoned by a spider, but Aoi getting angry at him is even worse. It's hard not to appreciate Aoi's strong personality and no-nonsense approach here. She definitely debuts with a bang, and even though she is suffering from a sense of inferiority at this point, as we'll find out, it adds depth to her character that she can unabashedly run the show and tell actual demon slayers what to do without being the least bit apologetic about it. Inosuke, in contrast, is actually not his usual self at this point. His throat got crushed and he's depressed, just being quiet in his bed as his great reunion with Tanjiro is taking place. Even though Aoi and Inosuke were in the same room here, there was no focus on their relationship, no interaction that we can point to. So compared to the Zenitsu going crazy over seeing Nezuko's scene and Tanjiro looking back at Kanao as the helpers are taking him away, this scene is interesting and notable because it doesn't include anything special. It clearly wasn't love at first sight with these two as far as we can tell, which makes sense when one of the people is wearing a boar mask after all, and since Inosuke is the youngest too, it makes sense that he'd be the last one to mature and start noticing or thinking about girls. During these Butterfly Estate chapters, we are told by the author that there's a rumor that Aoi was the one who repaired Nezuko's box. We're told she's got skills as she wears an angry face but is working on fixing Nezuko's box. It captures her character well. She seems like an angry, hateful person sometimes, but is actually really nice, sort of like a tsundere. Unlike Zenitsu, Inosuke did not enjoy the idea of girls loosening up his muscles and getting the chance to grab Aoi and Kanao in the tag game. When Zenitsu is psyched about the prospect, Inosuke simply says, and I quote, "Stop talking nonsense. Losing to those tiny girls is embarrassing," end quote. Showing that his mind was obviously not on girls at this point in his life, unlike Zenitsu's. Zenitsu even calls Inosuke out for being naive, saying he bets Inosuke never even spent any time with girls before. Only for Inosuke to misunderstand and say that he's stepped on plenty of girls. You gotta love Inosuke. Even though we don't see Aoi showing signs she likes Inosuke, we do see signs she doesn't like or appreciate Zenitsu's advances. She doesn't like it when Zenitsu holds her hand and beats him up for grabbing her during tag. It's hilarious to watch because as Zenitsu is trying to win her over, not even willing to throw a drink in her face, Inosuke is not trying at all. He has no qualms about throwing the drink in her face and even grabs her by the feet and hangs her upside down during tag, even though all he had to do was just touch her to win. Knowing what we know now, all of these earlier parts are absolutely hilarious. Aoi would go on to develop feelings, or maybe even is developing feelings at this point, for the guy who isn't the least bit concerned with being nice or polite to her. And I mean, to be fair, she isn't too concerned with being polite herself, so it's not that surprising of a match. When the gang is leaving for the Mugen Train arc, Aoi is nice enough, telling Tanjiro that it wasn't long, but she is glad they got to spend time together, and she wishes Tanjiro good luck. This is the really sweet moment where Tanjiro thanks her for taking care of them and says that it is thanks to her that he can fight again. Aoi says compared to them, she's not important, so the thanks is not necessary. She survived final selection due to pure luck, and since then, she's been afraid to fight, so she's a coward. Tanjiro really gets to her emotionally when he says that it doesn't matter that she doesn't fight demons. She helped him, so now she's a part of him. He'll think about her when he goes into battle. You can tell by the panel that she is very touched by Tanjiro's words. Tanjiro goes on to talk to Kanao after this, and Kanao actually blushes in the manga after he leaves, while Aoi doesn't. It's not romantic with Aoi and Tanjiro, but it's still a big deal because Tanjiro transformed Aoi's self-image here. Instead of viewing herself as a coward who is useless and should at the very least heal people who are her superiors, Tanjiro tells her that her part or role is just as important, and that if people she saves go on to defeat demons, it's her victory too, because she is a part of them now. Unfortunately, I don't see Inosuke's parting words to Aoi here, if they did specifically feel the need to exchange any. After all, Inosuke is his own beast who doesn't follow usual conventions, and while Tanjiro and Zenitsu are shown tearing up at their parting with the Butterfly Estate girls, Inosuke is just wearing his mask and we see no tears. You might think he might be crying but just has a mask on, but usually you actually see tears coming through the mask when Inosuke cries. Still, the fact that Aoi uncharacteristically said she enjoyed spending time with the trio could be a sign that she liked having Inosuke around specifically too. At this point, without knowledge of the future, it's definitely a stretch, but knowing what we know now, it could be a clue. After the Mugen Train arc, the gang is at the Butterfly Estate again. One day, Tanjiro is returning from a solo mission, and this is when he overhears Aoi's screams, while Tengen, the sound Hashira, is trying to forcefully take her on a mission. She looks very scared and nervous. She sweats as she tells the Hashira who is carrying her to let her go. He even tries to take one of the younger girls at first, who aren't even core members and accordingly aren't wearing the demon slaying uniforms. I briefly mentioned this part with the sound pillar near the beginning of the video, but it is really touching here that when Aoi screams out for Kanao's help, Kanao actually moves to do something. It might not seem like a big deal at first glance, but if you know her backstory, you know it's a super big deal. She sweats a lot as she thinks about her duty, the fact that Tengen is a superior officer, and so on. But then she recalls Tanjiro's advice to obey her heart, and that gives her the strength to grab hold of Aoi. Aoi is brought to tears by the fact that Kanao, who for a long time just followed the orders of superiors, finally broke that rule. As far as the Demon Slayer code goes, it appears like Tengen is in his right to do this. He implies that he only needs to ask for Shinobu's permission to take a Demon Slayer graduate on a mission if she is a Atsuguko, aka the chosen successor of a Hashira. Thus, he couldn't take Kanao without asking Shinobu, but he could take Aoi. Official Demon Slayer rules aside though, everyone else realizes how wrong he is from an ethical standpoint, and Tanjiro steps in to help. He tries to headbutt Tengen, but for once his super effective headbutt misses because of Tengen's speed. Finally, Tanjiro insists that if Tengen needs help, he'll go instead of Aoi. Zenitsu and Inosuke show up at this point, and Inosuke says before Zenitsu, and I quote, "I just got back but I'm not tired. I don't mind going either." End quote. It's not quite a proclamation of love, but whenever Inosuke seems to be doing a nice thing for someone else, you gotta stop and notice. And in this case, he does it on his future wife's behalf. Their feelings for each other aren't very clear yet, but the evidence that they like each other and want to help each other is slowly growing. And it's probably not lost on Aoi here that Inosuke was willing to risk his life on a dangerous mission to save her from having to do so. It's true that Tanjiro and Zenitsu are willing to do so too, but they're already occupied with budding love interests like Kanao and Nezuko. Now let's fast forward to chapter 100 after the trio come back from their Upper Moon 6 fight. Kanao is by Tanjiro's side, but Aoi isn't. She comes in after Tanjiro wakes up crying because she blames herself for all of their serious injuries. After all, as she points out, they were hurt because they went instead of her. Tanjiro finds out that Tengen and Zenitsu's injuries weren't as bad as his. But when he asks about Inosuke, one of the Butterfly Estate girls says he was in danger for a while too. She is not crying at delivering this news, but Aoi is crying a lot. It's actually quite the touching panel. She says, and I quote, "Inosuke's condition was really bad. The poison got deep in him. So he was slow to use breathing to stop the bleeding and ... end quote." She doesn't even finish her sentence before Tanjiro spots Inosuke on the roof. This is a significant moment where we finally get Aoi specifically worrying and crying about Inosuke. We can assume that while Kanao was by Tanjiro's side the most, Aoi was by Inosuke's. It's clear that no other girl present had Inosuke on her mind and in her thoughts as much as Aoi did. While Inosuke calls himself immortal and one of the little girls calls him dumb, it's Aoi who steps in and holds Inosuke back from attacking her. She yells at him saying the poison doesn't work well on Inosuke but neither does medicine, so he has to be careful. She criticizes him for already forgetting what Shinobu told him, but her outward frustration clearly points to her caring about Inosuke. After all, she wouldn't get so wound up if she didn't care about what happened to him. Inosuke, as hilarious as usual, tells Aoi to shut up and to stop pulling on him, and even calls her a shrimp, only for her to say that they aren't that different in height. It's a funny relationship dynamic between two short-tempered loudmouths with hearts of gold that's completely different from the other romantic relationship dynamics we see in the series. And even though they both act like tsundere and haven't confessed their feelings for each other, after this there is good reason to ship them besides just the fact that the other characters are already shipped with each other. Aoi was deeply affected by his injuries and continues to get emotional about it even though he's fine now and continues to care about him, warning him that he needs to be careful, despite him continuing to be rude to her as usual. and one can also assume that they wouldn't care to bicker with each other so much if they had no feelings for each other. It's been said that the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference, and these two are definitely not indifferent with one another. We also find out during Shinobu's fight against Doma that Aoi's family was killed by demons, just like Inosuke's mother was killed by a demon, namely Doma. It's significant that Inosuke helped defeat Doma since it was revenge for his mother, but it was also revenge for Shinobu, one of the most important people in Aoi's life. Now let's fast forward to after the world is saved from the Demon King of Pop. Inosuke and Aoi get another telling scene. Inosuke is walking around the estate thinking about how hungry he is. He starts stealing food while Aoi is cooking, and she calls him out for it. Inosuke lies, but wonders how she notices so fast, and that maybe she's strong, which is definitely a plus in Inosuke's books. And then we get an adorable part where Aoi gives Inosuke his own plate and says that when he's hungry he can eat from it. This plate will just be for him, so he can eat from it whenever he wants to. The implication is that she'll keep refilling it and making special meals for Inosuke. Inosuke this time is the one who stares at Aoi and blushes. He looks down at the food and you see possibly the cutest smile in the series plastered on his face. Finally, we have hard evidence that Inosuke is into Aoi too, and that the way into his heart is through his stomach. Then all that's left is the confirmation that they end up together. And we get this in the form of Aoba Hashibira, the great-grandson of Inosuke and Aoi. Even before it was officially confirmed that Aoi was the great-grandmother, it was suggested since the Awa in Aoba seemed to come from the Awa in Aoi. Then there's the new, more detailed ending they included in the final Demon Slayer volume that gives us some scenes that fill in some of the gaps between chapter 204 and chapter 205. There's even one panel that shows what looks like Inosuke presenting his idea of a gift, which seems to be some stuff he just scavenged from nature, to Aoi, and Aoi being genuinely touched to receive it. It appears to be a bit of a throwback to Inosuke's dream during the Mugen Train Arc 2, where he presents Nezuko with some acorns and says, and I quote, "Look, I'll give you these sparkly acorns, come on," end quote. He clearly associates it with it being a nice gesture and with it being a way to get people to come with him. Our manly boy has legit started to act like Zenitsu, who's always picking flowers for Nezuko. We also get a bit of info on their great-grandson Aoba here, like that he's 28, lost his job, plays badminton with Tanjiro and Kanao's descendant, and has one little brother. And that is it. Although it was the least focused on relationship of the big three, I hope I showed how it didn't come from nowhere, and there were subtle clues earlier on that these two may well end up together, aside from just their at times strikingly similar personalities. I genuinely love these two as a couple, and Aoi definitely brought out some of Inosuke's cutest moments, which is saying a lot since Inosuke tends to be manly more often than cute. But yeah, drop a ship it or skip it in the comments to let me know if you are a fan of this couple. If you did enjoy this video, you know what to do. Smash that like button. And if we can reach 6,500 likes on this one, I repeat 6,500, I'll get started on the next one ASAP, which will probably be about Mitsuri and Iguro. That's definitely an epic love story. If you love Demon Slayer and have yet to subscribe, what are you doing? Make this the video you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications so you actually get your regular dose of Demon Slayer content. And while you're waiting for the new Demon Slayer video to drop, feel free to check out my huge and growing playlist that includes videos on all the Hashira, Demon Moons, and much more. Link to that is in the description. If you're cruising through this playlist and see a video topic that's missing, feel free to leave it as a suggestion for a future video in the comments below. And I especially want to thank the patron squad over on Patreon and here on YouTube who help make videos like this one possible. First and foremost, I want to thank the patron of legend, the one acknowledged by Lord Twigo himself, Alpha Sigma, and other 1-tier patrons, the ones who stand atop all clans: Ingrata, Aljatal, Pate Hefa, the red-haired fox, Hinokami and Water, the Toasted Chi, Corey McGowan, The Spike, Dylan Isidore, Spidey Life Tanel, Tungsten Tarkus, Baked Buddhist, Monkey D. Quilly, Cody Hebert, and Jeremy Cummings. And our Pro Hero tier patrons, the one and only Gilgamesh, Steelers, Angel Cruz, Very Gucci, Alicia Actor, Bonnie Parks, Joanne Garcia, Fatboy Games, Kaido Might Be a Duck, Jessica Rabbit, and Jeremy Phillips. Thank you all so much. If you're also a fan who enjoys our work, you can directly support more of it by going over to patreon.com/AnimeUproar and becoming a patron today for as little as $1. If you do so, so you'll get your name featured in future videos alongside these amazing people right here, and you'll even get access to our private patron-only Discord where we talk about anime life and of course the dank memes. So check out patreon.com/AnimeUproar, link in the description if you're interested. You can also join the YouTube channel by clicking that blue join button next to the subscribe button that you've hopefully already destroyed. So yeah, you can support more content that way if you prefer. Whichever way you choose to support us, you can get the same great benefits. Thanks again, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys.